Hello guys, today we are going to the movie review. Movie name is Platoon 1986. Platoon is a critical acclaimed war film directed by Oliver Stone based on high experience as a soldier in the Vietnam War. The film provides a gritty, intense, and of portrayal of the South's moral ambiguity. The psychological tool of combat. Plot summary. The story follows Chris Taylor, a young soldier played by Charlie Sheen who volunteers for combat in Vietnam. As he navigates the brutal realities of war he encounters conflicts in moral perspective respected by two seasoned soldiers, the morally upright Alice and the more cynical and brutal Barnes. The films explore themes of morality, survival, and the psychological scars inflicted by war. Themes and styles. Platoon is notable for its raw realism, impressive combat skills, and powerful storytelling. Oliver Stone's directing emphasized the chaos of war, often using unhandled Taylor captured the innocence and disgust of young soldiers thrown into the horror of impact and receptions. Platoon was both a commercial and critical success, earning six Academy Awards including Best Picture and Best Actor. It is often regarded as one of the most realistic and impactful films about the Vietnam War, contributing significantly of the genre of war cinema. Overall impressions. The film is powerful, unpleasant, depicting of war's brutality and more complexity. Its realistic approach and emotional depth make it a must watch for those interested in war story of historical dramas. Would you like more detailed analysis or specific aspect of the films are discussed? Platoon 1986 full movie review. Introduction and backdrop. Platoon Platoon, directed by Oliver Stone, is widely regarded as one of the most authentic and win-circles portrayal of the Vietnam War ever put on film. Released in 1986, the movie marked a turning point in war cinema, blending personal storytelling with the raw realism. Oliver Stone, a Vietnam War Western himself, drew heavily from his own experience to craft the success combined his Palace as a seminal work in the genre of war film, influencing countless film and documentary about Vietnam and war in general. Plot summary. The story follows Chris Taylor, a young idealistic college student who volunteered to fight in Vietnam, arriving in the wrong battle and quickly thrust into the chaos, violence, and moral ambiguity of combat. The films takes place over a brief but intense period, capturing joy of platoons navigating the jungles and battles of Vietnam as Taylor witnessed the horror of war. He became embroiled in the internal conflict within the platoon, particularly between two region soldiers. The platoon members are torn between their desire to survive, the moral value, and the brutal reality of war. The film narrative explores themes of morality, brutality, camaraderie, and disillusionment. It depicts the eternal struggles, moral ambiguity. One of Platoon's central themes is moral ambiguity faced by soldiers. The film readily portrays war-force individuals of confirm their own ethics after leading to difficult choice. The conflict between who believes in doing what is morally right and bonds who embrace purity tools for survival exemplifies this tension. The nature of war. Oliver Stone presents war as chaotic, unpredictable, and dehumanizing. Performance and character. Sheen delivers a compelling performance as the newcomer who gradually becomes disclosed a journey from innocence to a hardened soldier in convincingly newcomer who gradually becomes discouraged. His journey from innocence to a hardened soldier is convincingly gradually becomes discouraged. His journey from innocence to a hardened soldier is convincingly portrayed. Willem's Defoe's performance is highlight embodying moral integrity and compassion. Its characters represent the hope for humanity amidst flaws and is a moral compass for the audience. Tom Brother is portrayal of Bragg captured the beauty and moral ambiguity of for his characters is complex, both a villain and a product of his environment. Supporting cast. The rest of the platoon. Cinematography. The cinematography by Robert Richardson captured the jungle's oppressive atmosphere and the brutality of combat. The use of color, shadow, and camera angles emphasize The film intense mood sound design. The sound design is wind circles with gunfire, explosion and jungle sound. Memorable lines that lighting the moral dilemmas faced by soldiers, impact and legacy. Platoon stands out not just for its realism but also for its emotional depth. It humanizes soldiers showing their fears, hopes, and moral struggles. The film challenge psychology to all legacy. It sparked debates about morality, war, ethics, and the psychology tool of patterns, award and recognitions. Best film editing, best sound, best actor in a supporting role for Williams Defoe's overall significance. Platoon is more than just a war film. It is a profound meditation on human morality, timeless piece that continue to resonate. It serves as both a historical document and a powerful cinematic statement, cementing its place in the pantheon of great war movies. Final verdict: Platoon is a must watch for anyone interested in the realistic of war, moral philosophy, or cinematic storytelling. Its intense realism, compelling performance, and profound themes make it not only an important film but an emotionally impactful experience that stays with viewers long after the credits roll. So, guys, Platoon 1986, an in depth review, introductions, statistical context. Platoon in depth review. Platoon, directed by Oliver Stone, is widely regarded as one of the most authentic and heroic portrayals of the Vietnam War in cinematic history. Released in 1986, in the film arrived at a time when America was still grappling with the aftermath of the Vietnam conflict, which had left a deep scar on the national right. The 1986 The Shock and Wave of Vietnam and film national cycling. The 1986 saw a wave of Vietnam War film, but a few captured the raw emotions and moral complexity of the war with the same whimsical intensity as Platoon's. Oliver Stone, a Vietnam War veteran himself, drew from his own thought out. The film's tailored encounters through contrasting soldiers who embody different moral philosophy allies Williams to competitors morally upright soldiers who believe in honor, integrity, and doing what is right. Was Tom Braggers a hardened, cynical Vietnam who believes in survival it and doing what is right. Was Tom Braggers a hardened, cynical Vietnam who believe in survival at any cost, often resorting to violence and brutality. The film reached a crescendo as this conflict philosophy clash culminating in a series of intense and morally ambiguous confrontations, themes, and philosophical underpinning, moral ambiguity, and ethical dilemmas. At its core, Platoon explores the moral ambiguity faced by soldiers is in wartime. The line between right and wrong is blurred with characters making morally complex decisions that challenge their ethics of survival, often leading to internal conflict and trauma. The choice of war, stone depositions of Vietnam and Saudi, unpredictable and trifling. The jungles become a symbol of South, representing both the physical environment and the more wilderness in which the soldiers stone depositions of Vietnam and Saudi, unpredictable and unpredictable and thriving. The jungles become a symbol of choice, representing both the physical environment and the moral wideness in which the soldiers operate. The film's handheld camera, quick cuts, and natural lighting are contribute to the sense of dissonance. The physical psychological tool. Platoon widely depicts the psychological scars inflicted by war. Characters camaraderie and conflict. Despite the brutality, the film emphasized the bonds formed between soldiers, trust, loyalty, and shared suffering. However, these bonds are tested by the moral conflicts and the chaos of war, leading to internal and external crises within the platoon. The loss of innocence. Taylor journey symbolizing Joe's loss of innocence from naive patriotism, illustrating of the human spirit. Characters analysis. Carries Taylor Charlie Sheen. Taylor's character arc is quintessential coming of age story set against the backdrop of war. Initially full of hope and idealism, and he is quickly disillusioned by the violence and moral contradiction he witnessed. Seems the performance effectively captured the innocence lost and the internal conflict of young soldiers forced to confront the brutal realistic of war. Elias Walsham Defoe's portrayal of Elias is both powerful and poignant. Elias embodies honor, compassion, and moral clarity. His characters serve as a moral anchor in the chaos, representing the hope for goodness in a corrupt environment. His tragic death Burns Stormbreaker Burns is a complex antagonist embodying brutality, cynicism, and survivalism. His morally ambiguous actions and aggressive demeanor highlight the darker aspect of war, where survival often overrides morally. Berenger's performance makes Burns multifaceted nature of war, technical aspect, and cinematic technique. Sound design. The soundscape is intense and realistic. Sensory overload of war. The film score, composed by George Delirieux, subtly underscores the emotional and moral tension in screenplay and dialogues. The screenplay, penned by Oliver Stone and David Robb, is sharp, poetic, and philosophical. It includes memorable lines and monologues that emphasize, emphasize the moral. The jungle amuse and early sketch that embrace the viewers in the chaos of combat, highlighting the unpredictable unpredictable sequence of war. The final confrontations are climatic scans where moral conflict come to a lead, leaving the audience to ponder the true nature of good. Impact, critical reception, and legacy. Platoon was lauded by critics and audience alike for its raw honesty and compelling storytelling. It's won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay, cementing its status as a cinematic masterpiece. The film's confronting portrayal of the Vietnam War challenged previous depictions that romanticize or sanitize the conflict. It humanized soldiers, showing their fear about morality, legacy, and their trauma experienced by veterans. Final thought: Platoon is more than a war movie, it's a profound exploration of morality, human suffering, and the shows that war unleashed upon individually the society's Oliver Stone's personal experience lend authenticity and emotional depth, making the film a powerful and haunting experience. The film's enduring relevance lies in its embracing honesty and its exploration of universal themes that transcend the Vietnam War era. It challenges viewers to reflect on the nature of violence, morality, and human resilience. In conclusion, Platoon remains seminal world work that continue to resonate with audience around the world combines of its technical mystery, compelling storytelling, and morally complexity makes it a must watch for anyone interested in understanding the true cost of war. Platoon 1986 an ultimate in depth analysis and review. Introduction a groundbreaking war film. Platoon stands as one of the most significant cinematic portrayals of the Vietnam War, not just because of its brutal realism but also because of its just because of its brutal realism but also because of its more world complexity and emotional depth directed by Oliver Stone, a Vietnam War Vietnam. The film is often hailed as one of the most authentic and unflinching depiction of combat and its psychological toll were created in Hollywood. The movie arrived in 1986, a period when America was still processing the dramatic legacy of the Vietnam War. It was part of wave of Vietnam themed films. Other includes the Deer Hunter 1978, Coming Home 1978, and Hambrung Ale 1987, but Platoon this historical context and significant. Historical context and significant. Vietnam was a contentious divisions conflict that deeply divided American society in the 1960s and 1970s. It ultimately left a generation scarred physical, psychology, and morally. Many soldiers returned home with trauma and disappointment, feeling that Platoon Scapulus Bradley Oliver Stone, a decoded Vietnam War veteran, sought to portray the war as brutal reality, stripping away romantic notions of heroism. He wanted to slow the audience, the shows morally dilemmas and psychologically fragmentation experienced by soldiers is personal trauma and first-hand knowledge lend authenticity to every scans and dialogues, making the films semi-autobiographical reflects the film's release in the mid-1980s coincided with the cultural shift America was finally confessing its war legacy, and Platoon played a pivotal role in shaping public perception and collective memory of Vietnam. Plot samurai in intimacy and heroic journey, the narrative center of Grace tells a young idealistic college student to voluntarily ambiguity. The core of the story revolves around the internal conflict within the platoon, primarily between Elias, a morally upright comrades, encounters brutal violence and is plugged into moral ambiguity. The core of the story revolves around the belief in honor, dignity, and doing what is right. A ruthless, hardened Vietnam who believes in survival aid and a ghost often resorting to violence and brutality. Terror. Moral ambiguity and ethical conflict Plato is a morally place that admits shows that war complete to make sure that hunt them, whether it's a killing mercy of trying blind eyes, it is a moral stance contrasts sharply with past cruelty, Elias advocates for honor and integrity believes in broadcasting civils, respecting the dead and maintaining human dignity. Once, on other hand, believes that survival depends on violence, supposing of empty, action. This dichotomy exposed the viewers to the moral gray zone soldiers inhabit, forcing reflection on questions like can morality survive in war? In is brutality sometimes necessary or to personal ethics survive amidst by the chaos and dehumanizing of war, the jungles become a symbol of chaos, confusing the moral wildness Oliver Stone's traditional ugly violence of warfare, emphasizing that destructions and dehumanizing warfare experience. The film also depicts how soldiers become harm or to violence over time. The initial shocks give way to routine violence, and the line between civilians and enem- enemies blurs. The jungle itself dense and obsessive becomes characters representing souls and morality, and oppressive becomes a character representing souls and moral wilderness, psychological trauma, and the human's cost of war plenty widely. Humans cost of war Platoon widely portray the mental scars inflicted by combat characters are haunted by nightmares, flashbacks, and emotional breakdown. The film emphasizes that the trauma extended beyond physical injuries or leaves deep psychological wounds. The scans where Tyler's fellow soldiers General Barnes killed become a poet's moment that shatter the illusion to heroism and force Taylor to conflict of two for cost of war. Camaraderie, loyalty, and eternal conflict despite the brutality. The film emphasizing the loss of innocence. Tyler's character arc symbolized the journey from nepotism to disclosement. His transformation reflects the loss of innocence experienced by many soldiers who earned the powerful of hope but left scarred and morally conflict. Character analyze complex played humans. Chris Taylor, Charlie Sheen. Taylor evolutions is central to the film's emotional impact. Initially idealistic, eager to prove himself, to become the increasingly disillusioned as he witnessed death and moral corruption. His performance captured the eternal turmoil, his vulnerability, confusions, and moral awakening. Elias William Defoe, a moral compass in the South, Elias embodies honor, compassion, and hope. He advocates for humans' dignity, and moral integrity. His death is a tragic reminder of the fragility of morality in war and serve as a turning point to Taylor Barnes' Tom Berenger. Barnes is a morally ambiguous character, brutal, cynical, and surrealistic. His actions often border on cruelty, but they are rooted in his belief that thoughtness and ruthless are necessary for survival. Burgers announced performance makes Barnes both a villain and a victim of war brutality. Other soldiers, the assembled cast including Kate, David Jones, Deep, and others portrayed a diverse range of background and moral perspectives, illustrating that war affects everyone differently. technical mystery filmmaking craft. Direction. Oliver Stone's direction is impressive and whimsical. His use of handheld camera, rapid editing, and naturalist lighting creates a gritty documentary-like feel that palace review in the midst of combat cinematography. Robert Sturgeon's cinematography captures the la- threatening jungle environmental, emphasizing both beauty and dangers. The use of color, white greens contrast with the beauty of violence heightens emo- emotional response. Sound designs. The soundscape is meticulous, crafted, embracing views in search of war, gunfire, explosions, jungle sound and silence of reflection. The scores by those values implements the film's tone balancing moments of reflections with chaos. Script and dialogues. The screenplay features poetic, philosophical dialogue that explore themes of morality and human nature's memorable lines such as Eli's speech and Tyler reflection underscore the film's moral questions, iconic scan and visuals. The jungle's ambush, harrowing depictions of sudden violence with shorty camera works, convincing discretions, allies death, a profound moment where the moral compass of the film is lost, emphasizing the tragedy of war, moral heroism. The final confrontations, a morally ambiguous showdown that leaves viewers questions the nature of justice and morally. Tyler's reflection, his voice, or inscriptions, the film's themes highlighting the moral complexity and psychological scars, critical reception, and cultural impact. Platoon was lauded for its authenticity, emotional depth, and moral complexity. It received six Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Directors, and numerous critics praised its raw honesty. The film challenged previous sanitized portrayals of war, emphasizing the moral cost and psychological trauma it humanized soldiers and providing announced repetitions of Vietnam brutal realities. The movie influenced subsequent war films, setting new standards for realism and emotional depth is also contributed to the cultural understanding of Vietnam, shaping public discourse and Vietnam perspectives, legacy and continued relevance. Platoon remains a seminal work that trans is its era, its themes of morality to mind, humans' resilience continue to resound across generations. It serves as a reminder one of humans caused of war and the importance of moral integrity amid chaos. The film's influence extends into other media and has inspired numerous filmmakers and written to explore war complexity truthfully. Final reflex and conclusion. Platoon is not just a war film, it's a profound meditations on human morality, the destructives of violence and the resilience of the human spirit, Olive Stone's personal experience and authenticity and depth, making it a haunting, unforgettable experience. Its enduring legacy lies is in its influencing honestly in emotions, power, and moral complexity. Its challenge viewers to confront uncomfortable truth about war, morality, and the human's conduct. In summary, an unflinching, realistic portrayal of Vietnam War shows deep explorations of morality, ethics, and psychological trauma. Complex characters embodying different moral philosophy, visually stunning with impressive cinematography and sound, impactful storytelling that shaped the war film genre, a timeless essential film that continued to resonate and provoke thought. Okay guys, Platoon 1986 and ultra deep exhaustive analysis and review. Introductions, a milestone in war cinema. Platoon is widely regarded as one of the most powerful powerful whimsical and morally complex film about war ever made, directed by Oliver Stone, a Vietnam War veteran. The film is not just a depiction of combat, but an emotional, raw exploration of morality, and human conditions amid shows it broke new ground in how war stories were told, emphasizing realism, psychological depth, and moral ambiguity. The film's significance is rooted in its ability to transmit entertainment and serve as a more moral and psychological mirror to the horror faced by soldiers and civilians alike. Its impact resonates beyond cinematic boundaries, shaping public perspective of Vietnam and influencing subsequent war narratives, historical and cultural context. The Vietnam War and its aftermath. The Vietnam War 1915-19 to 1950-75 was a conflict with politicians, controversy, social upheavals, and profound human suffering. It divided American society with widespread protest and debates about morality, imperialism, and patriotism. After the war, America faced racking a need to confronting in trauma, loss, and moral failures. The 1980s, a cultural reckoning. In the 1980s, the United States began to reflect on the Vietnam experience more openly. Thought Willem's lit- literatures and arts platforms emerged during this period as seminals were capturing the discernment and so of war in a way that previous films had not. Oliver Stone's personal connections. Oliver Stone's own military service. He was a decorated Vietnam influenced platoon with authenticity and emotional truth. His first-hand experience of compound trauma. Oliver Stone personal connection. Oliver Stone's own military service. He was a decorated Vietnam War Vietnam infused platoon with authenticity and emotional truth. His a vast experience of combined traumas and moral dilemmas provide the foundations for the film's raw realism plot summary. The film follows Grace Taylor's a young idealistic college student who volunteers for serve in Vietnam, driven by patriotism and a desire to serve. Upon arriving in Vietnam, Taylor is quietly immersed in the chaos and brutality of war. Thought out contest but intense period. Taylor's witness embarrassing abuse, terrified, and associates and grapples with the moral ambiguity of command. His Levanus and dignity bells, cynicals, brutal satans who believe in survival at any cost. The narratives explore the clash of philosophies claiming in violent confrontation, moral dilemmas, and personal tragedy. Major themes and philosophical underpinning, moral ambiguity and ethical dilemmas. Platoon relentless questions traditional nothing. Nation of morality soldiers are forced into morally grave zones. Sometimes the most kill civilians betrays courage to abandon their principles to serve the fellows voters far as a moral wilderness waves blank and white ethics and are impossible. Elias stands emphasizing morality, compliance, and human dignity, whereas Barnes advocates ruthless pragmatism. Their ideological clash embodies the film's core moral conflict. Can morality survive in the chaos of war? The chaos of dehumanization of war. The dance jungle symbolizes our literal and moral awareness. The film's handheld camera work, rapid editing, and nature's lighting creates distortions, emphasizing how war erodes human identity and morality. Scans of firefights, ambush, and jungle ambulance show war brutality, unpredictability, and dehumanizing effect. Soldiers become numb, detached, or violent, illustrating how war strips away innocence and companies, psychological trauma, and human cost. Platoon's wide depicts the psychological scars of combat. Characters are haunted by nightmares, flashbacks, and emotional breakdown. Its portrayal trauma as an ongoing, inescapable consequence of war, allies, death. His Vans beauty are poignant symbol of loss of innocence, morality, and humanity. The film underscores that trauma extends beyond physical bound, asphyxiate the soul, the bond of brotherhood and eternal conflict. Despite violence and chaos, soldiers form bond of loyalty and camaraderie. The relationship providing moment of hope and humanity. Our internal conflict more discriminant streets trauma test response leading to violence and enlistment, loss of innocence, Taylor's transformation from naive patriot or to disclosed patterns explains the universal loss of innocence. In war, his moral awakening is painful and profound, illustrating that war, corruption, and scar even the most hopeful characters. Analysis Chris Taylor's Charlie Sheen's Taylor's journey from innocence discernment is central. His initial patriotism is challenged by the horror in whiteness. Seems performance capture vulnerability, confusing, and more awakening, making Tyler a relatable proxy of viewer. Alice Williams Dew's Alice Williams Defoe Elias present morality and compassion amidst chaos his dignified stance and tragic death, symbolizing the loss of moral anchors in a war. Diffuse performance is both powerful and heartbreaking, embodying hope and moral integrity. Barnes, Tom Braggers, Barnes embodying brutality, cynicism, and surveillance. His actions, violent, ruthless, often cruel, highlighting the darker realities of war. Braggers' performance is nuanced, portraying a man shaped by trauma and moral compromise. Supporting character Janus Barnes, a young soldier grappling with violence and loss, King, a claimed moral soldier who provides a counterbalance to South's other soldiers. Each character offers a difficult perspective, reflecting the delivers human experience is in a war, technical masterpiece and filmmaking techniques, directions and cinematography. Stone's directions is impressive. His use of handheld camera creates immediacy and shows embracing viewers in combat. disorientation. The rapid editing, heightened tense build, naturalist lighting enhance realism. Robert Risto cinematography capture the jungle's beauty and terror. The lush generates contrast with sense of violence, emphasizing duality of nature and war. Sound designs and score. The sound designs immersive gunfire explosions, jungle sound, and silence evoke sensory overload. The score by Ghost delivers is subtle yet emotionally resonant, balanced sounds and reflections, screenplay and dialogues. The screenplay features poetic philosophical dialogues that explore morality, and human nature. Iconic lines such as allies species deepens the moral themes. Iconic scans and visual moments. The jungle's ambush, wind circles scans capturing the sudden violence and sound of combat. Life's death, a tragic moment that symbolizes loss of moral clarity. The final confrontations, a morally ambiguous shadow that leaves viewers questioning justice and morally Tyler's reflections, his voice, our nation Inscapables, the film's themes of discrimination and moral ambiguity, critical receptions, and moral impact. Platoon was lauded for its realism, emotional depth, and moral complexity. It won 6 Oscars, including Best Pictures and Best Actor, become a cultural touchstone. The film challenged sanitized bottles, emphasizing the, the moral and psychological tool of war, it humanizing soldiers and highlighting the moral faced is combat influence extend into subsequent war films, setting a new standard for authenticity and emotional honesty. It also played a significant role in shaping public understanding of Vietnam legacy. The legacy of Platoon remains a timeless masterpiece relevant across generations. Its themes, morality, trauma, resilience are universal. The film continued to provoke reflection on human nature and the cost of violence. Its influence persists in film, lectures, and popular culture, inspiring filmmakers to depict war complexity truthfully. Final reflection and critics' appreciations. Platoon is more than a war film, it's an essential exploration of human morality amid Charles Oliver's Stone personal experience imbued the films with authenticity, making it a haunting, unforgettable experience. The film's enduring power lies in its honesty, emotional depth, and moral complexity. It challenges viewers to confront uncomfortable truth about war, morality, and the human's conditions. Summarize and at pressing realistic portrayals Vietnam War South, deep exploration of morality, ethics, and psychological trauma, complexity, characters embodying diverse perspectives, visually stunning with impressive cinematography and sound, influenced the war film genre profoundly, a timeless, essential work that continues to inspire and provoke thought. Platoon 1986, the definitive, unpredictable in-depth analysis and review. Introduction, a cinematic milestone in war narratives. Platoon is widely cinematic milestone in war narrative. Platoon is widely regarded as a landmark film in the depiction of war, distinguished by its raw authenticity, moral complexity, and emotional intensity. Directed by Oliver Stone himself, a Vietnam War veteran, the film is not merely a war story but a profound meditation on humans, morally humans, and survivals and South. It broke new ground is in a cinematic realism, expressive, romanticized nations of heroism to confront the brutal, often ugly truth of combat. It is a whimsical experience that challenges viewers to confront the ambiguity faced by soldiers and questions the very natures of human morality under extreme circumstances, historical and natural contexts. Vietnam War, a deeply devised and traumatic event. The Vietnam War was a conflict marked by political controversy, social upheaval, and profound human suffering. It divided America's society, sparking protest, civil unrest, and soul-searching debates about morality, imperialism, and patriotism. The war aftermath left Oscar's psychical, and toll on soldiers and civilians alike. The trauma of war, along with the disagreement and guilty, permeated America culture for decades. By the cultural climate of the 1980s, by the 1980s, America was grappling with its Vietnam legacy. Films like The Leaf Hunter 1978, Coming Home, and Hamburger Hill 1987 explored the trauma, disagreement, and moral dilemma of Vietnam. Platoon embraced it is this this moment offering a win circles uncovering portal that reflect the collective needs for honesty, confronting the horror many hoped for. For it was both a cultural healing and warning. Oliver Stone's personal connections. Oliver Stone survives as a combat infantryman in Vietnam, profoundly influenced Platoon's first-hand experience like authenticity, emotional depth, and moral insight. His personal trauma and This comment informs the film's moral ambivalence, making it both a personal catharsis and a universal statement. Plot summary: a harrowing intimacy journey. The film follows Chris Tyler's, a naive film narrative is compressed into a tense period depicting abuse, trifling, most conflict and tragic loss. The core of the story involves around the moral divide within the platoons, primarily between Elias Willem. Default a morally upright, compassionate soldiers who believes in honor, dignity, and protecting civilians. Bonds Tom Berenger, a hardened, cynical veteran who believes in survival at any cost after resorting to brutality. Thought out the story, Tyler, the horror of war face moral Clemens and undergoes a profound transformation, struggling to reconcile these ideals with the brutal realistic around him. Deep dive into major themes: moral gradients and ethical dilemmas. Platoon relentless explores moral ambiguity. Soldiers are forced into situations their right and wrong are blurred. The film questions whether morality can survive in chores of war. Like advocate for honor, mercy, and human dignity, Burns believes in ruthless pragmatism, survival, and brutality, and here ideologically, class embodies the moral conflict at the heart of the film. This diagnosis is of the films. This dichotomy raises profound questions. If violence was justified, can morality be maintained in extreme circumstances? How does war erode personal ethics, house dehumanizations and natures? The jungles become a symbol of choice, cycle, and moral wilderness. The natural environment lost yet threatening underscore the duality of beauty and brutality. The film's handheld camera work, rapid editing, and natural lighting create discriminations, embracing viewers in combat search scans of abuse and fire heightened evoke a visceral sense of unpredictability and horror. Whereas dehumanizing effect is depreciated thought soldiers' emotional numbness, loss of innocence and moral decay. The jungle isolate and engulf, mirroring the eternal soul of the characters. I cycle trauma and PTSD. Platoon's widely portrays trauma, not just cycles enduring about, but mental scars, characters hunted by nightmares, flashback, and emotional breakdown amplify the long-lasting effect of combat, allies depth and Barnes' cruelty symbolizing the more moral emotions tool. The films emphasizing that war scars the passions often more deeply than physical wound, but loyalty and eternal conflict despite brutality. Soldiers from bonds of loyalty. This relationship provides moments of loss, hope, and humanity amid chaos. However, internal conflict or discriminatory stigma test bonds leading to violence and discriminations. The film explores how war strains human relationships and reveals and practice of morality, a loss of innocence, and moral awakening. Taylor's card symbolizing the loss of innocence. He transitions from naive portraits of discrimination reflection the universal experience of soldiers facing the moral complexity of war. His voice even narrative inscriptions the disclaimer emphasizing that war destroys innocence and moral certainty. Characters analysis deep psychology portraits Chris Taylor begins as an optimistic, idealistic young man. His journey is a reflection of many soldiers initially believing in patriotism, then conversion, the brutal, realistic Force performance captures vulnerability, confessions, and moral awakening. His eternal conflict between hope and despair, morality and brutality drives the narratives. Life tunes, Elias embodies morality, designs, and compassion. His belief in horror, honor, and humanity provide as a moral anchor his tragic significance, the loss of moral clarity in war emphasizing the tragedy of moral erosions, Defoe's portraying balance, strength and vulnerability, embodying hope amid despair, Warren Stormbreaker. Burnett is a complex character, brutal, cynical, and pragmatic. His actions, violent and often cruel, are rooted in trauma and a desire for revenge. Berenger as performance reveals in a man shaped by war, struggling with his own moral boundaries. Supporting characters: Janus Barnes, young appreciating, compelling with violence, house, kind, claim moral, and a voice of reasons. Whether each character reflect of the soldier's experience from innocence to hardened survival. Film's techniques cutting a visual and auditory masterpiece, directions and cinematography. Oliver Stone's direction employs immersive techniques, handheld camera, rapid editing, naturalistic lighting to simulate combat shows. Robert Richardson's cinematography captured the last beauty and roughing brutality of the jungles, emphasizing the duality of nature and war. Sound designs and chaos. Sound design critics and intense sensory experience, fire, explosions, jungle sound, and moment of eerie silence heightens tensions. So deliriums goes balance shows with reflections, underscoring emotions, beats, and moral dilemmas, screenplay, and dialogues. The screenplay features poetic, philosophical dialogues that explore morality, and human nature, allies species, and tailor reflections deepen and moral questions, iconic scans, and visual moment. The jungle imbues a wing-circled depictions of sudden violence and discouragements, allies a death, a poignant moment symbolizing the loss of moral integrity and innocence. The final cinema confrontations a morally ambiguous shadow that challenge a nation's of justice. Taylor's voice hour reflect the moral ambiguity and disclaimers that prevents the film's critical reception and cultural impact. Platoon was loud critical for its realism, emotional depth, and moral complexity. It's won six Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director, and become a cultural touchstone. It challenges sanitarian portrayals of war, emphasizing the psychologically and moral tool its influence extend into futures for films, setting new standard of authenticity and emotionally honesty. The films help shape the police understanding of Vietnam legacy, its moral ambiguity, romance, and human cost. The lasting legacy, Platoon remains a seminal work relevant across decades and generations. Its themes, morality, trauma, resilience, are universal. It's continue to provoke reflection on human nature and the cost of violence, its influence, persistence, and film features and popular culture inspiring others to depict was complexity with honesty, final reflection, and enduring masterpiece. Platoon is more than a war film, is it is a urgent moral inquiry into human natures. Oliver Stone's personal experience led authenticity and emotional truth, making it a haunting, unforgettable experience. Its power lies into in its honesty, emotional depth, and moral complexity. It's a challenge viewers to confront uncomfortable truth about war, morality, and human conditions, truth that remains relevant today. Summarize the ultimate takeaway: an unpleasant, realistic portrayals of insult, soul, and multi-dimensional characters embodying delivers perspective, visual stunning, impressive cinematography, and sound designs. A film that refined was storytelling, cinema, and enduring thought-provoking masterpiece with universal themes. Would you like me to include detailed sketch analysis, memorable quotes? Hello guys, you comment in the comment you hope you like this reviews so I can give this any depth review this movies. So continue with three. Here is incrementable night side nervously text to noise night navigating the nouns of narrative nouns that necessity need for nouns storytelling notable narratives nostalgia needed to nostalgic. It's a moral extensive piece of writing with the latter appearing as many times as possible. The rebel knight Nistles nervously backs to noisy night navigating the nouns of narrative nouns that essential that need for nouns storytelling, notably narrative nonchalant noted to nostalgic nothing to the nostalgic nations that naturally nations still announced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, novel narrative nightly navigates the no-go zones of narrative nouns, necessitating a more nuanced approach to storytelling. Natural narrative, natural narratives announced approach naturally not to nostalgic nothing the nostalgic nations that naturally essential announced approach to story notably notables narrative nouns plenty now to nostalgia nothing the nostalgia nation that naturally announced approach to storytelling novel narratives neatly navigate the no co-zones of narrative nouns necessitate a more nuanced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, nature's narratives necessitate a nuanced approach. Nature's nodding to nationalism and non-worth narratives constantly nodded to nostalgia. Nothing the nostalgia continues that natural essential announced approach to storytelling. Neural narratives navigates the nouns of narratives nouns. Necessity announced approach to storytelling notably notable narrative nouns recently noted to nostalgia nothing the nostalgic nothing the natural necessary announced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, novels narratives neatly navigates the no-go zones of narrative nouns necessitating a more nuanced approach to storytelling navigates the nouns of narrative nouns necessitating a nuanced approach to storytelling nodding to nostalgia and non-quality is announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia knows narrative nightly navigates the no-go zones for narrative nouns necessity a more nuanced approach to storytelling nature's narrative necessity announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia notably notable narrative consequently nodded to nostalgia Nothing the nostalgic nations that nature's announced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, no narratives nightly navigates the no-go zones of narrative nouns narrative, a more nuanced approach to storytelling. Novel narrative resistant a nuanced approach naturals nodding to nostalgia, notably. Notably, narrative nuancely nodded to nostalgia, pointing the nostalgia nation that naturally seized a nuanced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, Nature's narrative next a nuanced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia, navigating the nuance of narrative, nascent a nuanced approach to storytelling, nodding to nostalgia and nonsality, nothing the nostalgia, nothing that naturally necessity announced approach not through narratives naturally necessitate announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia nevertheless. Uh, Novels narratives neatly navigated the no-go zones on narrative nostalgia, a moral nuanced approach to storytelling. No-go zone assistant, a nuanced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding to nostalgia, notables narratives, constantly nodded to nostalgia, nothing the nostalgic, nothing notions that naturally stations announced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, nature narratives announced approach naturally nodding nostalgia, navigating the last of narratives, narrations announced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding to nostalgia, knows narratives, insist announced approach, naturals nodding to nostalgia, nonchalant narratives, constantly nodded to nostalgia, nothing the nostalgia notions that naturally necessity announced approach to storytelling, realize natural nature, narratives, essential announced approach, natural nodding to nostalgia, necessary narrative, message announced approach, naturally nodding to nostalgia, notables narratives, constantly models to nostalgia, nothing the nostalgia notice that naturally announced approach to storytelling, nevertheless novels narratives, neatly navigate the no-go zones of narrative more nuanced approach to storytelling, navigating the nuanced of narrative consistent nuanced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding to nostalgia, no-go zones, necessity, a nuanced approach to storytelling, natural nodding to nostalgia, notably narrative nonchalancy nodded to nostalgia, nothing the nostalgia nations that naturally resistant the nuanced approach to storytelling, necessary narratives institute a nuanced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia, net worth narratives naturally essential a nuanced approach Naturally nodding to nostalgia. Novels, narratives, necessity, announced, approves, naturally nodding to nostalgia. Naturals, narratives, necessity, announced, approves, naturally nodding uh, to nostalgia, notably narratives, announced, uh, to nostalgia, nothing, astrology. Navigation, the nouns of narrative nouns, assistance, announced approach to storytelling naturally, according to nostalgia, neutral narratives naturally, still announced approach naturally, according to nostalgia, no goes on, essential announced approach to storytelling naturally, noting Lol narratives sensitive announced approach naturally, nodding to go to nostalgia, notably notable narrative, non-salty, uh, nodals, no nostalgia, nothing, nostalgia, nothing that naturally, an essential announced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, nature's narrative essential announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia, navigating announced of narratives, not resistance, announced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding to nostalgia, no ozone, resistance, announced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding, no nostalgia, not worth narrative naturally essential announced approach naturally according to nostalgia necessary narrative misled announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia notably notables narrative non-certainty notables to nostalgia nothing that nostalgia nothing that naturally Succession's announced approach to storytelling, nevertheless novel appreciative, atlasy navigating the no-go zones, no narratives, nouns, necessitating a more nuanced approach to storytelling, navigating the nouns of narratives, nouns, necessitating a nuanced approach to storytelling naturally, according to nostalgia, no-go zones. Essentiate announced approach to storytelling naturally nodding to nostalgia notes narrative assistant announced approach naturally leading to nostalgia natural narrative essentiate announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia notably notable narrative nonsensely nodal to nostalgia nothing, the nostalgia nothing, notions, the naturally essential announced approach to storytelling, nevertheless novels, narratives, uh, neatly navigating the no-go zones of narratives, nouns, necessitating a more nuanced approach to storytelling, navigating the nouns of narrative nouns, resistance of nouns approach the approach to storytelling, notables narrative non-certainty, nodal to nostalgia, nothing the nostalgia, nothing that naturally consistent nouns approach to storytelling, nevertheless novels. Narrative needlessly navigating the no goes on Non-narrative nouns necessitate a more nuanced approach to storytelling, navigating the nouns of narrative nouns. Necessitates a nouns approach to storytelling, naturally, according to astrologia no Jones necessitate a nuanced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding to nostalgia, not what narrative naturally assistant announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia. Novels native assistant announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia. Nature's narrative assistant announced approach natural nodding to nostalgia. Nations that actually exceed announced approach to storytelling, nevertheless, novel. The version of narrative nouns nations and a moral nouns approach to storytelling, navigating the nouns of narrative nouns, assistant announced approach. Yes, natural, uh, natural narrative assistance announced approach naturally, according to nostalgia notably. Notable narrative nouns gently nodded to announced approach to storytelling, nevertheless, novels, narratives, needless, navigating the natural narrative, announced approach, natural nodding to nostalgia, notably notable, narrative constantly nodded to nostalgia. Nothing the nostalgia noticed that naturally essential announced approach the approach to storytelling nevertheless novel narratives neatly navigates the known no-go zones of narrative nouns, necessitating a more nuanced approach to storytelling, navigating the nouns of narrative nouns, necessary announced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding to nostalgia, no-go zone, necessitating announced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding to nostalgia, not worth narrative, naturally essential, announced approach, natural, nodding to nostalgia, novels, narrative, essential, announced approach, naturally nodding to nostalgia, nature's narratives, nature's announced approach, naturally holding to nostalgia, notably notables, narrative, non-certainty, noddy to nostalgia, nothing, the nostering nations, the naturally announced approach to storytelling, nevertheless, novels narrative neatly navigated the no-go zones of narratives, nouns, essential, a more nouns approach to storytelling, navigating the nouns of narrative nouns, essence, a nouns approach to storytelling naturally to nostalgia, not toward the narrative necessary announced approaches naturally blinding, navigating the nouns of native nouns essence announced approach to storytelling naturally nodding to nostalgia, no goes on essential announced approach to storytelling naturally nodding to nostalgia not worth narratives naturally. Message announced approach naturally, holding to nostalgic novels, narrative message announced approach naturally, nodding to nostalgia, nature's narrative, assistant announced approach naturals, holding to nostalgia, notables announced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, those narrative needlessly navigate the no-go zones. No, nevertheless, nouns necessitate a more nuanced approach to storytelling, navigating the nouns of narrative nouns necessitates a nuanced approach to storytelling. Navigating the nature's narrative necessitates announced approach naturally, nodding to nostalgia notables. Notables narrative now essentially nodded to nostalgia, nothing that naturally sent a announced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, those narrative neatly navigated the no-go zones of narrative nouns necessitate a more nouns approach to storytelling, navigating the nouns of narrative nouns necessitates a announced approach to storytelling naturally, nodding to nostalgia, no-go zones necessitate a announced approach to storytelling, naturally nodding to nostalgia network narratives naturally necessitates announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia novels narratives necessitate announced approach naturally holding to nostalgia naturals narrative or necessitates announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia notable narrative nonchalant nodal to nostalgia. Nothing the nostalgia notions that naturally necessitate a nuanced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, novels narratives nightly navigate the no-go zones of narratives nuanced necessitate a more nuanced approach to storytelling. Navigating the nouns of narrative nouns. The second announced approach to storytelling naturally nodding to nostalgia novellas. Insistence announced approach to storytelling natural nodding to nostalgia network narrative naturally message announced approach natural nodding to nostalgia novel narrative message announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia natural narrative associate announced approach naturally nodding to nostalgia notables narrative essentially nodded to nostalgia nothing the nostalgia notions that naturally associated announced approach to storytelling. Nevertheless, novels narrative needlessly navigate the no-go zones of narratives, now necessitate a more nuanced approach to storytelling. Navigation the nouns of narrative nouns necessitate a nuanced approach to storytelling naturally. Nodding to nostalgia no-go zone necessitates a nuanced approach to storytelling nature nodding to nostalgia network narratives. Natural nations announced approach of naturally nodding to nostalgia novel narratives assist announced approach Natural note into nostalgia narrative nicely noted to nostalgia nothing the nostalgia notion that essential announced approach to storytelling nevertheless novels that is not lessly navigated